guaranteed to be less painful than a German footballing beatdown. Welcome to Dre TV.
Welcome to you all at home.
You've still got a chance to win this race, haven't you?
Just try. I wanna be the only one to make you
Hey guys, I'm Dre Harrison and welcome to episode 11 of Dre TV here on the Harrison 101 YouTube channel. The motorsport show that takes a look at Formula 1 and MotoGP over the last couple of weeks. Sorry it's been a little while since the last episode, but I finally got around to taping this one after being a little bit ill. My throat was a bit all over the place. I couldn't really sit down and commentate for long periods of time. Right, in the meantime, in this episode, we will talk about all the major talking points from the 2014 British Grand Prix in Formula 1. A lot to talk about through that one, as well as Hamilton's comeback, Rosberg's first retirement, Kimi Raikkonen hitting the barrier at 47 Gs, as well as Vettel versus Alonso as well. We'll be talking about MotoGP from Assen from a couple of weeks ago, a little bit looking forward towards the German Grand Prix this weekend as well. And we're going to talk a little Formula E for the first time on this show. I was invited to their global launch party last week, so I'll be reporting about what I found from that event, as well as some other good stuff there as well, and my thoughts on the series as we head towards September and its big debut. Also, I kind of find it funny, I'm taping this in my brother's room. You can see, like, back here, like, that warm-up looks like a car. It's a bit weird. Also, as well as an Ask-Dre segment and the catch-up on the Castrol GP Predictor as well. We'll give you an update on how that is going as well. So, in the meantime, I'll leave you to sit back and enjoy what I thought of Formula 1's 2014 British Grand Prix. Hey folks, Dre here with another 5 thoughts on the British Grand Prix for a race review, and this time for Formula 1's British Grand Prix. Another surprisingly interesting race, with Nico Rosberg's streak of 8 consecutive top 2 finishes coming to a halt, an enormous crash for Kimi Raikkonen and Felipe Massa, Williams finally gets one right at the other one with Valtteri Bottas, and an exciting finish as Jenson Button tried desperately to chase Daniel Ricciardo for the final podium spot. Lewis Hamilton taking another enormous swing in terms of the championship race. Let's break it down, shall we? So, the pendulum swings in the battle of the Mercedes drivers. The amount of cynicism I saw on social media this past Saturday was palpable when Hamilton, for seemingly no good reason, abandoned his final qualifying lap, despite everyone else continuing and finding multiple seconds in Sector 3. Hamilton was now starting 6th, in a hole with Rosberg on pole. Many a Hamilton fan was declaring the championship as good as over. Alex Gillen. Now, during the race, after the safety car, Rosberg pulled out a 5-second lead as Hamilton quickly cleared the McLarens in between, and was gunning Rosberg down at a rate of knots, switching to a one-stop strategy, and finding even more pace on the prime tyre. The gap was within 2 seconds when Rosberg suffered a gearbox failure, pretty much sealing Hamilton's victory at the halfway point in the race. Nico Rosberg previously had 8 consecutive top 2 finishes this season so far, and compared to Hamilton, had 43 more points gained from his teammates' mechanical breakdowns. So Hamilton's win pretty much wiped out the Australian woes, meaning the gap to Rosberg is now just 4 points. Might as well push the reset button, it's effectively a 10-race championship now. Ultimately, coming off of yesterday, this was a race Hamilton just had to win, and he did. Lewis looked impervious from start to finish and destroyed the field in the process. Game on. Bottas' driver of the season and testament to Williams' progress. It wasn't the driver of the season. It was probably the best driver of the last 2 seasons. Bottas qualified 14th on the grid, had an incredible start off the first lap into 9th, and would then go on to produce a string of brilliant passes, the outside pass around Stowe being a popular one, and pushed on into an incredible 2nd place, and way ahead of the competition not named Lewis. I know I've given Williams a hard time on here before, but it's only because they're capable of performances like this. In all fairness, Williams' improvement has been phenomenal this season, and they've only gotten stronger as time has gone on. Bottas' back-to-back podiums and Felipe Massa's pole position in Austria is a testament to how far they've come. Fernando Alonso needs to be careful because Ferrari's third in the Constructors is at serious risk if this form continues. Speaking of which, this race had Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso going to war. Now this was fun and probably something a lot of people have wanted to see for a good while. A scrap between two of the best drivers of the last decade going head to head as Alonso and Vettel did battle for nearly 20 laps. Alonso putting off a defensive driving masterclass keeping Vettel at bay, especially through the Wellington complex. And as Martin Brundle said, he was given a car whip and 2 cigarette papers because, as Vettel will tell you, you have to leave it the space. It was brilliant driving from both Sebastian and Fernando, who just threw caution to the wind and went for it. Vettel finally winning the fight after Alonso ran a little too wide, and Seb was able to win the world's fastest game of chicken into cops at 185 miles an hour. What I hated about this fight was the bitching over the radio. Both Sebastian and Fernando didn't bask themselves in glory, moaning about the other's actions. Vettel whinging about Alonso's defensive driving, complaining that he wasn't leaving enough space, while Alonso moaned about Vettel's track extending, something they were both doing. A shame considering both drove superbly well, wheel to wheel, lap after lap, and it was the most entertaining fight we've seen this season. Just watch the replay on mute for maximum enjoyment. Also, we had Kimi Raikkonen's 47G collision. Holy crap, we got our first red flag of the season and a 1 hour delay for the restart as Kimi Raikkonen went wide through turn 5, turned back on the racing line, failing to notice the bump in the road, losing control, hitting the right barrier at 47 Gs, bouncing off the last wall and destroying the car, unfortunately collecting Felipe Massa's Williams in the process. A somber end for his 200th Grand Prix. Although, to be fair, he did well to avoid a 170 mile an hour T-bone collision. The class from both men were exemplary, both asking if the other was okay. Luckily, Felipe was fine, and Kimi's only suffered minor swelling to his ankle after getting checked out. Seemingly, he will be okay for Germany in a fortnight's time, Pedro de la Rosa and Jules Bianchi covering him for the test this week. Seriously, it's a testament to the safety in the sport today that even after an incredible hit to a barrier at 170 mph, and pretty much being able to walk away straight away afterwards. Just think, this was an even bigger collision than Perez and Massa at Canada a month ago. But should Raikkonen have been punished for causing a collision? Leave that one to you guys in the comments. Also, the crash caused Niki Lauda to be a tad draconian. I respect and appreciate Niki Lauda, and I love the fact he's always willing to speak his mind. But please, don't talk about how it's wrong to take so long to fix the barrier. I honestly find it puzzling and bemusing that a guy who nearly died in the car 40 years ago doesn't appreciate the effort that goes into safety in this sport. I don't care if you postpone the race until tomorrow, you fix that damn barrier. Safety was, is, and should always be the #1 concern and priority in this sport, and if there's even a 0.01% chance of something else hitting that barrier, you fix the damn thing. The fact I saw multiple fans bitching about this on Twitter I found disgraceful. I will admit that he was right, the restart rules are confusing and should be made clearer, but to suggest Formula 1's becoming primitive and draconian over a repaired barrier taking an hour to fix is ridiculous and borderline insulting to the staff of Silverstone, who are no doubt working as hard as possible to enable us all to go as racing as soon as possible. Also, I didn't think it was a massive point, but a brilliant drive from Jenson Button to finish in 4th. A great result given McLaren's recent dire form, and was so close to what would have been a tremendous podium in dedication to his father. I'm sure wherever John Button is, he would be very proud. Also, man did Vettel get shafted on the 2-stop strategy. Once again, Daniel Ricciardo gets the rub of the green. It's a conspiracy! Hey, it's no weaker conspiracy theory than Hamilton's pit stops, right? And finally, God, that winner's trophy is awful. Never again. Anyway, I'll leave you guys to link in the comments what you guys thought of the British Grand Prix. And thanks for listening. And hope you guys enjoyed that little sum up of the British Grand Prix there. Any thoughts on the race you would like my take on, feel free to put them in the comments below. Also, I really like these shades I found in my brother's bedroom, so I'm not going to wear these for the rest of the review. I hope you kind of like them. Anyway, let's look at the Castrol GP Predictor League, shall we, after the British Grand Prix. First of all, let's give a couple of shout-outs to the top 3 highest scorers of the week for the British Grand Prix. Mika Badial, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, by the way. Mika was the highest scorer of the race with 75 in the Dre TV League. It's one of those weeks that probably because of Rosberg's retirement, it probably messed up a lot of people's scorecards. But Mika had 75 points, a good result from him. Team Blogger there in second, Kieran Gibbons. Is it Kieran or Kieran? Sorry if I pronounced it. I hope it's one of the two. If it's anything other than that, I'm going to be a bit confused. But yeah, Kieran Gibbons there in second with 72. And Owen Quemby, you may know him as the YouTuber Owen TQ128 there in third with 70 points. The 3 highest scorers of the week. But if you look at the overall scoreboard, it is Alexei Korsman who still leads the way with a massive 620 points. Joe McMillan in second place with 538. Nearly 90 points back. That's absolutely ridiculous. That one killer week from the, I think it was the Austrian Grand Prix that completely flipped the scoreboard on its head. And Josh Suttil still there in third place, 7 points ahead of Chris Halliwell, the highest ranking scorer outside of the t-shirt positions. Remember, the top 3 scorers in the league at the end of the season win a Harrison 101 t-shirt, which you can buy now on my website at Harrison101. Harrison101.com/store, or my Spreadshirt page, Harrison101 hd.spreadshirt.co.uk. You can buy a shirt, male and women, and if you buy a shirt and you take a picture wearing it, I will put it in the show and give you a free shout out as a way of saying thank you for supporting me in the show. So if you haven't already, thank you very much. If not, get in the Predictor League and have a shot at it and see if you can win a copy of F1 2014 on the console of your choice for being the overall winner, or getting a t-shirt for being in the top 3. As you can see, I'm just hanging on there in the top 10 as well there, 492 points. Would you believe it? I have the 1600th highest score in the world. Yet, somehow, I am in 10th place in my own league. Weird how these things turn out. I'm not even the highest ranking YouTuber anymore. Friggin' Arav has knobbed me by 7 points. An absolute stunner, as he would say. Right. Moving on, let's talk a little bit about Formula E. Now, I was invited down to the Formula E Global Launch Party at Camden this past weekend, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, as well as some of the announcements that have been made about Formula E and what I think of the sport in general. So I hope you guys enjoy that, and I'll catch you back here later. First of all, before I start, I've got to say a massive thank you to Matthew Layton of Zone 1 Radio for being kind enough to invite me down to Camden to check out Formula E's global launch, even if he kept me waiting for 20 minutes. One day he'll do one of these things on time. Anywho, I've not really mentioned Formula E on this channel before, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to talk about what happened at the launch party, as well as some general thoughts on the new sport in general. Now, at the launch party, it was pretty fun. The sound system was booming, and they had some great dancers going on there, very artistic. They had cars from the teams littered all over the floor. It was the first time I'd seen them in person, and while a bit lengthy in the nose, I liked them. I thought they looked great. Alejandro Agag, the CEO, did the heavy lifting during the presentation, with a couple of cool videos showing in between some of the cars touring around London, which was the big surprise for the end, which they totally didn't make obvious, but in between they made some pretty interesting announcements. First up, they had Edams, who had team co-founder and 4-time Formula 1 world champion Adam Prost down to make the announcement of a Renault partnership, and the team being officially renamed to Edams Renault, as well as a quick chat with their 2 announced drivers, Nicolas Prost, son of Alan of course, and Sebastian Buemi. They also had Jarno Trulli down to make the announcement of his team's 2nd driver. In a minor surprise, it was Michaela Cerruti, the MotoGP driver who became the first female driver to win an open-wheeled event since 2009. She came across as very hyped up and very excited. Nice girl. They also revealed their new partnership with BMW and revealed 2 BMW i8s on stage in standard trim. I think they may end up being a medical car or a safety car of some kind. It makes sense given the i8's hybrid tech, but it didn't exactly make clear what that car is going to be actually used for. The big announcement, though, was declaring the site for the London E Grand Prix, which would be at Battersea Park in London. As a London resident myself, I'm very excited that London is finally getting some Formula racing after Bernie's been cock-teasing the same possibility for years in Formula 1. Excited to see how that works out for the season finale in June 27th, 2015. Okay, now let's break down some of the things Mr. Agag himself said during his main talk. Music. Yes, apparently there's going to be a full musical experience with every race, as well as special musical pieces played at the start of the race, whenever the fan boost is activated, which I'll get to in a minute, and at the finish. From what I've been told by people who's watched the tests, it's apparently pretty good. I've yet to see or hear this yet, but I'm certainly intrigued. Mr. Agag's approach is clearly one geared on being different, more of a complete entertainment event, beyond just the racing itself. Either that, or he's masking the noise. I'm not entirely sure. Can only speculate. The noise of the cars themselves is actually pretty good, in my opinion. The calendar? Going by the video promo shown during the event, it looks like the Formula E races are taking place on street circuits. In case you haven't seen the locations, they are Beijing, China, Putrajaya, Malaysia, sorry if I'm pronouncing any of these wrong by the way, Punta del Este, Uruguay, Buenos Aires, Argentina, Miami, USA, Long Beach, USA, Monte Carlo, Berlin, and London. There's still one event yet to be announced for Valentine's Day 2015 as well. Like I said, some strong street circuit vibes here. Not sure if I dig it just yet. We still have to see how the track layouts and how the cars handle at full speed. But I guess that's what makes it intriguing, as I don't think anyone truly knows yet, and I'm excited to see some racing at more locations. Fan boost. Yeah, this has been one of the more controversial gimmicks the sport has. Formula E fans will be able to head to the website and then vote for their favourite driver prior to the race. The winner gets one 2.5 second power boost, giving them 50% more horsepower. With Jean Tot's video message at the show saying, fans will have the power to directly influence the race results. I have to say, I'm not keen on this. At all. Fan interaction seems to be high on the FIA's agenda, and I applaud them for that, but this is an awful idea. Racing shouldn't be influenced on track by the fans. You're inadvertently turning the sport into a glorified popularity contest, a racing version of the X Factor. It's not a massive influence, but there's such a thing of making us Formula 1 fans and Formula fans in general a bit drunk with power. Again, I'll await the race itself before I truly pass judgment, but even the prospect of this idea doesn't sound great, even more so when you hear the owners of the app get 5 times as many votes. The drivers. Now, this might be the headlining factor of Formula E so far. The driver lineup is solid, a great blend of experienced talent and new stars, male and female. There's been 16 of the 20 driver and car lineup announced so far, including Sam Bird and Jaime Alguersuari at Virgin Racing, Catherine Legger and Anthony Felix da Costa for Amlin Aguri, Lucas de Grassi and Daniel Abt at Audi Sport ABT, Nicolas Prost and Sebastian Buemi at Edam's Renault, Karen Chanhock and Bruno Senna from Mahindra, you may remember them from Moto2 and 3, Jarno Trulli and Michele Cerruti for Trulli Racing, Nick Heinfeld and Stefan Sarrazin for Venturi, Mike Conway announced at Dragon Racing, and Frank Montagni for Andretti Motorsports. Team China are still waiting to reveal their 2 drivers, and Dragon and Andretti still have only announced one of their 2, but as you can see, the lineup is great, a wide spectrum of the racing world covered, male and female, and some recognisable names, experienced, and possible some new stars for the sport to potentially blossom. I'm really looking forward to seeing them all in action. And how about social media? Something I'm very glad the FIA is doing well with Formula E, as I mentioned earlier, and it's the integration of social media. As much as Bernie wants to write it off, every team in Formula 1 and the vast majority of the drivers know the power of Twitter and being able to interact with us, the fans. Formula E already has got official Facebook, Twitter and YouTube pages, are active, and while small for their size at the moment, are only going to get bigger as September and the opening race approaches. As well as obviously getting a TV deal on ITV4 over here in the UK. Overall, I'm excited for Formula E. I'm not expecting to blow my socks off straight away, but I really want it to do well. It could be a true open-wheeled, viable alternative to Formula 1 and IndyCar in the States, with some fresh talent in the spotlight and some genuinely innovative ideas and new tracks. And of course, more jobs for people in motorsport can only be a good thing. As Michael Fallon, Minister for Business and Enterprise, said, over 300 new jobs are being created as a result of the sport, which is fantastic considering it's based in the UK, right here at Donington Park. I'm not totally sold. And there's a lot riding on that first race in terms of presentation and how it all boils together. But overall, I think there's a lot to enjoy here. We all in motorsport should get behind Formula E and wish it well. I certainly am. Are you? Let me know what you think in the comments. So what did you guys make of Formula E? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say on the matter, because that's a very, very interesting sort of topic indeed. Do you see it as a true viable alternative to Formula 1? Do you think it will stand out on its own? Do you like the different approach it's taking compared to the FIA in Formula 1? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So if you're curious, if you've got an opinion on Formula E, I'd love to hear it. So please put it in the comments below if you haven't already. In the meantime, let's move on to Ask Dre. Okay, welcome to Ask Dre, the part of the show where I answer your questions based on Formula 1 motorsport or any other good stuff that happens to float around the timeline at the time I ask these questions out. Again, in advance, apologies if I pronounce any of your names wrong, only by accident. I struggle with these kind of things, sometimes I'm terrible with names, but hopefully we'll get through it alright. First up, friend of the show, Ryan King sends in a question. You may have seen one Around the Corner and other hangouts we've done before, and Around the Corner Champion as well. He comments saying, Ask Dre, thoughts on Lewis Hamilton saying that Nico Rosberg is not really German? This shit is so silly. It really is. Basically, Hamilton in an interview said that Rosberg isn't really German because he was brought up in Monaco for the majority of his life. My response to that statement is, if I was born in France, but spent my adult years growing up in New Zealand, does that make me a Kiwi? No, it doesn't, because my birth certificate says I was born in France, so I would be French. Just because you spend the majority of your life in another location doesn't mean you're from that country. Yeah, it might be a spiritual home for you, but on your birth certificate it will say you were born where you were born, and Nico Rosberg was born in Germany. Yes, he has a Finnish mother, if I'm not mistaken, and yes, he grew up and spent a lot of his time living in Monaco. But he's German. He chooses to represent Germany. That was his choice. He represents himself as a German driver in the face of a German team. I mean, he is as German as Hamilton is British because he was born there too. So it was such a dumb thing from Hamilton to say, really, because he clearly doesn't understand like how general birth concepts work. Look, just because you were born there doesn't mean if you spent your time raised in another country it means you're from a different place. That's silly. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, just Hamilton logic. And I've already taken the piss out of him on Twitter for this, and quite frankly he deserves it for not thinking. Like, for a grown man who's 29, I don't think he understands basic concepts. Is a bit concerning. Anyway, we have a question from Aaron I can't pronounce that. That's going to be a problem. Chiaveni. I'm going to say Chiaveni. If I got it wrong, I'm sorry. So talk about MotoGP and the German Grand Prix this weekend. He says, Mark had a heavy crash today and looks to be struggling this weekend in MotoGP. Do you think he can come back and win on Sunday? Yes. The answer to that question. Marquez struggling in practice is not a new thing. If anything, most of Marquez's mistakes comes in practice and sometimes even in qualifying a little bit as well. But it mostly happens in practice where he's trying to find the limit of the bike and he's trying to find where he can push it, where he can't push it. Yes, he had a big crash in free practice, on a massive high side where he had to be checked out a little bit, but he was perfectly okay. Luckily, the man seems to be made out of rubber, quite frankly. And he was back out in free practice too, and his race pace looked fantastic. He was doing low to mid 22s the entire session and finished up with the second fastest time overall behind Aleix Espargaro. So Marquez looks perfectly fine to me, and he's won the last 4 German Grand Prix in all classes, going back to 2010 when he was with the Derby team in the 125 category. So Marquez looks pretty impervious around Germany at the moment. It's going to take a very special effort from somebody else or a big Marquez mistake for him to lose and for him not to go 9 of 9, to be honest with you. Right, I'm going to the Facebook questions now. Alex Southgate saying, if you would hang out with one rider from MotoGP and a driver from Formula 1, who would it be and why? If it was Formula 1, I would probably say... I'd probably say Hamilton, actually. Believe it or not, like, Hamilton lives the party life, he lives the city life, he's a very well-known celebrity figure, he gets into all these cool parties and places and whatnot. So, I like that kind of thing, so I'd probably have a really good night out with him, if that makes any sense. I'm not the biggest fan of him, the person, but I'll probably be too busy trying to hit on his girlfriend anyway, so... if it was MotoGP, I would say... probably Cal Crutchlow. He's been my favourite rider for a long time, and he's a very funny guy, very likeable, bit creepy, to be honest, a little bit, but I think he's a very nice guy. And if it wasn't him, I'd probably say Jordi Torres in Moto2, because I think he's hilarious. If you ever subscribe to MotoGP's channel on YouTube, check out A Sideways Glance At. Jordi Torres is always in there for doing something really crazy. He's a very, very funny bloke, Jordi Torres. He actually won the German Grand Prix this time last year, funnily enough, which was a great moment as well. Okay, Owen Quemby asks, for the rest of the season, which team is more likely to win? Red Bull to get another win, or Williams to get their first since 2012? Right now, I'd say Williams. I think Williams are the closest we've seen to a Mercedes so far this season. Austria was kind of proof of that. It showed that they got the fastest cars in a straight line. They're hitting over 340 kilometers. They were doing that in Canada, for example, and they were definitely the closest straight up to beating a Mercedes outside of Canada so far this season. So Williams are looking very strong at the moment. Obviously, they're on Mercedes power, so overall they're looking great at the moment. Red Bull are always strong. Daniel Ricciardo has been very consistent right now, but I think, Red Bull might come back into play later down the line after developments, obviously. And they're stronger around those other tracks like India, Singapore, Korea, those more technical circuits. They tend to be stronger. So if anything crazy happens up the front, maybe Red Bull can pinch another one there as well. So there's a viable chance for both. James Francis White asks, what is your favourite generation of the Enstone team, i.e. Tolman, Benetton, Renault and Lotus? Probably Lotus, only by default, really, because I was never really around for the Benetton days. I was very young back then and didn't really back anybody. Tolman was obviously way before my time. Renault, I was never really a fan of. I was never a big fan of Alonso when he first came to fruition as a guy, so by default I kind of have to say Lotus, really, that they're a likeable bunch. They're a bit on social media, but Kimi Raikkonen was one of my favourite drivers, and he represents them, so that's always a good thing. Okay, Miles Pardo, the premier Hamilton fanboy, goes, do you see Renault in the sport in a few years? Probably. I don't think Renault will go away just because they're having some bad times at the moment. If that was the way businesses work, then the world would be a very different place. They're going for a rough patch. Obviously, they've replaced their engine development guy as well, so there seems to be a lot of change going on at Renault at the moment, but I think they'll rebuild and come back stronger. They always have in the end, and they've never been the best engine suppliers, but they've always worked well with teams, so I don't think they'll go away anytime soon just because they're having one bad season at the moment. If it carries on through next year, though, who knows? Joseph Willow's asking, what do you think of Lotus switching to Mercedes next year? Great move for Lotus. One of their biggest struggles is their engine power concerns, and obviously being a Renault is probably the weakest of the three major suppliers at the moment. And yeah, Mercedes is by far the strongest. So if their engineers can get back to work and get a more aerodynamically efficient car, then maybe Lotus can mount a comeback next season, because there's potential there. Grosjean has always been a strong driver. He's very much improved. Maldonado is not terrible. People like to take the piss out of Maldonado, but bottom line is the guy has won a Grand Prix, and you don't fluke that kind of thing. So he's got the potential. So the whole team's got potential, but not with Renault at the moment, I would say. Who do you think will win the World Cup? From Christian Sorgendahl is my final question of the day. Well, it's between Argentina and Germany. I'm recording this on Friday night, so we know what the final is going to be. I would say Germany for me. I think Argentina has been mediocre, but has been carried by Lionel Messi. He is so creative, and he is the talisman for that team. He does such a brilliant job with that team that maybe Messi's got one more world-class performance in him to take them over the top. I wouldn't say Messi's been the best player this tournament, but I think he's certainly been the most dangerous. And I think teams are facilitating to try and take Messi out of the game, which is what Van Gaal did in the semi-final. But Germany, I think, looked comfortable against Brazil. Obviously, they destroyed them 7-1. They looked comfortable against the French in the quarterfinals. So I think, overall, I think Germany will put on the better team display and win their 4th World Cup. Or is it their 5th World Cup? I can't remember how many it is. I think it's their 4th. I think they'll get the better of Argentina on this one, to me. Anyway, if you've got any Ask Dre questions, put them in the comments below, or just tweet them at me using the hashtag AskDre, or on my Facebook page at facebook.com/Harrison101HD. Right, before we go, let's talk about MotoGP and the Grand Prix of Assen. This season continues to get more and more ridiculous. What is it with Assen and throwing something ridiculous up? It happened again this weekend with changeable conditions, a competitive Cal Crutchlow, Valentino Rossi's heroics from the back, Jorge Lorenzo falling backwards again, Dovi shining in the wet, a shock win for a guy 11 years after his last trip to the podium, but with one familiar name on the top step. Like a fish. Remember Formula 1 Canada 2011 and how the fact it rained and it caused carnage throughout the race because it rained on and off? This is the dangerous beauty of changeable conditions. Assen got the same dose on this one. This went back to qualifying where Moto 2 and 3 were largely unaffected, but due to a 10-minute rain flash between Q1 and Q2, it caused mayhem with all 12 bikes on circuit together trying to space themselves out for a big lap. Marquez with one of the craziest double overtakes on an in-lap that you'll ever see, and only came second as Aleix Espargaro got the space needed to nail a lap and take the Open class's first ever pole position. The rain bumped Crutchlow up to 5th, but it was the Yamaha factory team that got caught out again, with Lorenzo qualified 9th and Rossi 12th, an extremely disappointing showing given how many had touted Rossi for the win. I have to give Dorna and the FIM some credit. They really do a good job in changing the rules on the fly whenever freak circumstances come up. And they did another great job as the rain came again during the grid walks, and they gave the option of an open pit lane and 2 extra sighting laps so the riders could get a gauge of whether the track was better with wet or dry tyres. Pretty much everyone chose the wets except for Brock Parks, especially Pol Espargaro and Valentino Rossi, who changed their minds at the last possible second and started from the pit lane on the wets. Madness. And during the race, the track dried up enough that within 7 laps, 90% of the field had switched bikes back to the dry tyres, and the form of the field had shifted again. Amazing how these things turn out, and the back and forth nature of the weather was what made this one so special. As for the race itself, well, okay, seriously, how do you beat Marquez? This time the MotoGP gods gave him what's normally a ridiculously tough combination. Andrea Dovizioso, a super stiff Ducati, rain, and he made a mistake on his outlap, and he still won by 7 seconds. I'm starting to think the only way to beat Marquez is to decapitate him. With his latest win to go 8 of 8 for 200 points, he became the first rider since Giacomo Agostini back in 1971 to win the first 8 Grand Prix of a season. We have to start asking the question, is the perfect year possible? Props have to be given to Dovi on this one as well. He stuck with an average Ducati bike, but it, and himself, always seem to come alive whenever it rains, and that was a superb performance to finish second given the circumstances. And further back, Valentino Rossi showed his class once again with a sensational ride from the pit lane to finish in 5th. He was carving through the field the whole way through like a hot knife through butter, and it's a testament and centrepiece to his redemption year. He's been as good as I've seen him since his last World Championship. Props to Andrea Iannone again for continuing his great season with 6th place, a career high finish. More awesome news for Brock Parks as he came out of nowhere to finish in 11th place, sealing the best ever finish for MotoGP for Paul Bird Motorsport. A lovely moment as the team have worked so hard to get more performance out of the customer bike. And he even finished ahead of Jorge Lorenzo. Don't get me wrong, it's not entirely his own fault. I was mocking Jorge on Twitter for finishing in 13th, an awful result for a rider of his calibre. But then he was incredibly honest in the post-race interview, admitting that he was scared in the rain due to his horrific crash last year that damaged his shoulder blade and probably cost him the championship. I feel bad for him, that accident must play on his mind, but 13th and nearly half a lap down on the winner is just not acceptable. Never going to judge someone for how they deal with grief and negativity, but man, that may have been the final nail in the coffin for Jorge's season. He now lies back down in 5th, 119 points behind Marquez's 200 through 8 races, and nearly 50 back from his own teammate in Valentino. If this form continues, it's going to make a lot more people question the double world champion's temperament. Moving on to Moto2, and the last time Anthony West was on the top step of a podium was the only time Anthony West was on the top step of a podium, and it was this very Grand Prix, back in 2003. But it was a majestic performance from the Aussie, coming through from 23rd on the grid to win after leading pair Sam Lowes and Simone Corsi both hit the deck during the middle of the race. He earned it too, having to hold off the threats from Maverick Vinales and Mika Kallio towards the end, whereas championship leader Tito Rabat was super conservative in 8th. Not sure it was the right call. Rabat's been the guy in Moto2 so far, but to only have a 26-point lead through 8 races, a little surprising, isn't it? It certainly caught me out when I saw it. I'm sure Tito will be back to his best in Germany, and if this season's anything to go by, the rookies and the other top Moto2 talent will trip over each other trying to play second fiddle, which in Rabat's case is definitely a good thing. As for Moto3, Alex Marquez won his second consecutive Grand Prix while championship leader Jack Miller hit the deck. The season so far seems like Jack Miller looked like he could run away with the title while the Spanish committed civil war on each other. Then Romano Fenati started to dig in as a viable contender while Alex Rins slowly got back to his old pace. Now with Marquez dominating the last 2 races, sounds familiar, and with Fenati down in 18th and Miller failing to finish, Marquez has launched himself into a genuine title contender, and he's not the only one. The top 5 in the championship right now are covered by just 15 points. Jack Miller with 117, Fenati with 110, Rins with 110, Marquez with 110, Rins with 107, and Vazquez with 102 are all still in the hunt, and on their day, all are capable of winning races and challenging. And that's not even including any of Bastianini's rapid improvement either. We could be on track for one of the best and the most competitive Moto3 seasons since, well, last season actually. I thought the division might struggle compared to last year. Maverick Vinales, Luis Salom and Jonas Volger have all moved up and looked impressive in doing so, and it seems to have actually made the division better with how competitive it's been. Let me know what you thought of Assen in the comments below. Okay, that'll do it for this week's Dre TV. Again, if you have any thoughts on MotoGP at Assen a couple of weeks ago, I'd love to hear them in the description below, as always. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and until next time, I've been Harrison101, and thank you very much for watching. Sayonara.